Hey guys, another video for our Crime and Emergency Services in Japan playlist. This is in an emergency center in Japan, and it's a tool for educating people about earthquakes. So as many of you would already know, there's about 300 earthquakes a year in Japan, many of which, or most of which, we don't even notice because they're so mild, but all sorts of different earthquake and all sorts of different levels. So this is educating about the different kinds of earthquake. Those of you who live in places where you experience earthquakes will recognize that there's all sorts of different earthquakes. Some move the ground from side to side, some jolt it up and down, some have a wave effect, some have a combination of all of those. This is also showing that this area of central Japan is actually overdue for a major earthquake, is overdue by about 50 years. So they generally happen here about every 100 years, and it's been 150 years since the last major one. So it means that this central Honshu area is well overdue for a major earthquake. So they're expecting it any time. A lot of the emergency services are geared up, expecting that big one to happen any time, and some fairly catastrophic damage to be done. So this simulator is just giving people a chance to experience the different types of earthquake and the different levels. So the different types of movement. So if you watch how that machine's moving there, that's a fairly gentle, I think it's about a 3. And then he's stepping it up with a 7. They're fairly severe. Those of you who come from countries where you don't have earthquakes, you'd be amazed at the experience. It's a really unique experience to go through a real earthquake. 300 earthquakes a year in Japan. Most of them we don't really feel, but it's not unusual to be woken up in the middle of the night, woken up with the house rocking from side to side. If you live in an old style house, you tend to notice it more than a new one because it's noisier. The new ones tend to absorb it a little bit more and just sort of rock gently. They're generally made a little bit more flexible, so they rock gently and they're not as noisy. But if you live in an old style house and it starts doing this, but that's severe. That's a 7. That's a 7, so that's fairly severe. And you can see when the ground's doing that, you can see how old buildings can be damaged, can't you? You can see why they collapse. Generally in Japan with houses, the older houses, the problem is the roofs are really heavy and the walls are relatively weak compared to the weight of the roof. So the problem that we have in Japan is when the old houses start rocking like this, quite often the big roofs come down, and quite common after an earthquake to see an area where you've just got roofs, big heavy tiled roofs, because the walls have collapsed and the roofs have come down to the ground. And that's quite a common scene in Japan after an earthquake. So that's the most severe type, the one he's got me going on there. That's quite a ride. That's devastating, that is. That's a 7 or 8. That's what we're expecting in central Japan any day now. So anyway, that was an interesting experience. I hope you enjoyed that. More videos coming soon.